All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Coffee Q&A, your daily, weekday coffee discussion. What's going on? How you all doing today? Moist, good to see you. How are things in Singapore? And Q&A, good to see you. How are things in Thailand? I know it's a little bit late for you guys, and when you watch, so I certainly appreciate you staying up into the evening hours in your part of the world. How's everything going? How was your weekend? Hope it was good. I had a nice time. Hung out with family and friends, and that was really good. Took some time yesterday to replant stuff around the house, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So last week we were talking about doing more about roasting. So I thought, well, before we get into the roasting, let's start off with talking about green coffee. Green coffee is what you're going to need, of course, to roast coffee at home. And so the important thing is to, it says the video is really choppy. All right, let's see. Let me know if it is smoothening out. I'm running it on a dedicated server. Oh, let's see here. Let's go back to this network. I think I should be able to change network. Okay, are we still there? We're still there? Okay, good. All right, it's more smooth now. Excellent. So back to us saying green coffee is what you need to roast coffee. Otherwise, if you roasted coffee, it'd be kind of ridiculous. Now, the hard thing is that where do you go to find green coffee? Now, there's several different places you can go. And if you're out there, where you guys are in Asia, I'm not really sure exactly how it works out there, but for the most part, it might work. So one of the first things I would suggest is, well, let's rewind a little bit. Before you go out and like buy coffee, you have to and start to roast coffee. You have to think about what kind of coffee do you want to roast? Like, what kind of coffee do you like? And here's the best part: is that in my role as a coffee operator, I have to buy coffees for a larger audience, right? For all of our guests and all of our clients, we have to buy coffees to meet their desires, to meet their needs. Whereas when you're making coffee for yourself and you're buying that green coffee, you can buy just what you like. So you can get very, very specific. You can get very, very personal about it. And so I think one of the important things to do is to start off by thinking about, what do you like? What kind of coffee do you enjoy? And then go seek it out. Like, if you have a favorite roaster in your town and and they buy nice quality coffee, you could approach that roaster and say, hey, would you be willing to sell me a pound or two of green coffee? Now, of course, you should be prepared that when you're buying like that, you're not going to probably get the best price, overall, meaning that I'm sure the roaster would probably uh, charge a little bit of a premium, or maybe they're not. Maybe you'll actually get lucky and the roaster will be like, oh yeah, or home enthusiast, let me slide this to you at either my cost or a little bit over cost. So it's just really it depends on who you're talking to and how well you have a relationship with them. Kenny says getting green coffee in Thailand is actually, I should. In Thailand, that does make sense because you've got a lot of growing regions up the north, so getting green coffee should be fairly simple. You're right. You're totally right about that. I didn't even think about that. Like, even in the Philippines, you can get green coffee relatively easily. So I would suggest, and in your guys' cases, there's got to be brokers that are selling green coffee that you can probably approach and be like, hey, I'd like to buy some coffee from you. And one of the disadvantages about being a consumer is that you're not going to buy the coffee in the quantities that a commercial roaster will buy them. Like, commercially, a lot of the countries are exporting coffee at 69 or 70 kilos, so about 150-pound bags. For most home users, 150 pounds is a lot of coffee that it may take you a long, unless you're like drinking crazy amounts of coffee, like it will take a long time. So, you might want to buy a pound. Like, a lot of people here in America buy a pound. They'll buy maybe 10 pounds at the most. But 10 pounds for a solo, coffee guy is a lot of coffee. So just go and talk to them. But another place, if you're in the United States, and I think they will ship outside the United States, there are companies who that I think do very, very well for sourcing green and sharing green for consumers. And there's a website called Sweet Maria's, and I put a link down below. Let me pull it up here on our laptop. and we will have a look at if my laptop will turn back on. All right, there we go. So this is Sweet Maria's. This is their website. And I don't really buy from Sweet Maria's because I just buy from other sources. But these guys are great. Like Owen Thompson is a really great coffee buyer who buys beautiful coffees, and he's a really kind of quirky, interesting dude. I really like him. I don't know him very well, but I always liked him. But he's really great in buying coffee. He's one of the pioneers of buying green. So what you basically can do is you can go here like to the top and look at what are the origins that are available. What origins do you tend to favor? Colombia, Brazil, Peru, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Honduras, um, Burundi, Ethiopia, Kenya. Actually, I just made a video about when we're drinking. No, I was just drinking some Burundi the other day. Now I wasn't making a video about it, but then Indonesia, Southeast Asia. And basically, one of the nice things about let's go to the Sumatra. And so they've got a little bit of background about Sumatra. And one of the things that I like about Sweet Maria's is that the owner is very psycho. Like he's just crazy about coffee. He's super knowledgeable. He's super, focused on quality. So the nice thing about buying coffees such as these is that you're pretty much guaranteed that it's going to be well sourced, well sorted, and just of a very nice quality. Like here, if we're following what they're saying, 87.6, that's a very, very great score for coffee. And, it does have a price tag to match, $8.55. In the world of American, green coffee, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. One of the things that, we notice, that I've noticed as a green buyer is that in the United States, we have a very different world of coffee where it's very price conscious. And so a lot of green buyers don't want to spend a lot of money. I mean, they don't want to spend a lot of money because they're not charging a lot of money for the coffee, and the consumer tends to balk at higher prices. I think that might be changing now that everybody's like, making crazy profits. All the corporations have been raising their prices. But you can go to Sweet Maria's and pretty much go through it, and we're going to look here like this Sumatra anaerobic wet hulled Olea. Notes of dark berry and fruit bring depth of flavor to herbal accented sweetness with profiles of brown rice syrup, dried date, resonant bitter sweetness, and notes of green herbs in the aroma. And the nice about Sweet Maria is that they are a company that is really geared towards serving the home roaster. So they're telling you here, like they're getting these notes at a city plus to full city plus roast profile. So, you're going to go a little bit darker than what you may be used to from the Says and Onyxes of the world. They're going to say this coffee, this Sumatra anaerobic wet Olea, wants to have that kind of like depth of roasting, depth of complexity, a little bit more sweetness and development, right? And so those are the things you might consider as you're looking at the different coffees to see like, oh, okay, this is maybe you might read this and you're like, oh, I don't really like that. That's not really what I'm looking for. Maybe I'm looking for something more. Let's go to the Ethiopia side. Maybe I'm looking for something more light and citrusy. Right here, that's these are like sets of. Let's see this Hambella Bullseye or Boulier. So this, middle to dark rose. Okay, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for, as well, let's go look at that. As you could see there, it does say here, this Ethiopia dry process Hambella Boulier, they're telling you excels in middle to dark roast. So they're going to tell you, and as espresso, so they've already tested out the different profiles on the coffees and are like helping you along to figure out, okay, which is the best coffee for what I'm looking for flavor wise, or what's the best coffee for what I might like in roast profile, right? So those are some things that you might want to consider Let's see if they have something that they talk about. How about this dry process Fitsume? Oh, here we go. This natural processed coffee carries dynamic flavors and attractive aromatics when roasted light, with notes of peach cobbler, marmalade, lime zest, rue herb, coriander, rustic cocoa, and a tangy acidic aspect, city to full city. Actually, I'm surprised they would even say that city to full city. I mean, makes me wonder, like, are they like Owen and them are old school guys. So light roasts for old school guys is more of medium roast, and what some of the newer cats would think is dark roast. Well, anyway, I don't know. I don't know. What do I know? What do I know? But these are the things that you should consider, looking at that. And then when you finally get the coffees, and so you can here, let's have a look at this let's try this other one, this Benti Nenka. So they sell them in $8.50, 1 pound increments, and you can get them up to 20 pounds. Is there a discount? 145. Is that a discount? I don't know. Oh yeah, they do offer discounts. The larger quantity that you're willing to buy, they will discount that. Like this one here, spectacular addition to our dry process offerings, aromatic floral notes and an airy side to the heavier fruit flavors, lilac, ripe strawberry, blackberry, juicy orange, and fruit preserves. Again, city to full city, but a 92 cup score. So that's a very high cup score, something for you to consider. But does cup score mean everything? Not necessarily. Like it could be, here's the thing. So like you want to read the flavor descriptions, right? To see, are the flavor descriptions kind of in your wheelhouse, right? Because when we're out grading coffees in the world, we could have like 3 or 4 of us that are together that are buying coffee, and we could sit down and we're tasting the coffees, we're evaluating the coffees, and we're asking ourselves questions about the coffees, and then we'll always discuss later, like, what kind of score, how would you score that? Maybe 85, 87, maybe whatever. And most of us tend to agree within half a point to a point of each other. So qualitatively, it could be very good. But does that mean it's the right coffee for you? Not necessarily, right? So you could get a 92-point coffee, but if it produces flavor notes that you're not really in tune with, how great is that coffee for you? And especially in your world where you're buying coffee just for yourself, for your personal enjoyment, that's what it's all about. It's all about your enjoyment. So choose coffees based on the notes that fit what you're looking for, rather than just this got a great cup score. Yeah, because you know what? Let's say they got a great cup score qualitatively wise, but if you're the person that doesn't like tea like coffee, doesn't like florally, one of my good friends who actually lives in Thailand years ago, he was like, I tried that geisha. And I was like, "What do you think, man? It's awesome, right?" He's like, "No." He's like, if I wanted a coffee that tasted like tea, I would just drink tea, and it would cost me a lot less. I was like, "Yeah, okay, that fair point, fair point." So that's something that I think to keep in mind. Does green coffee keep well, or do you need to roast them quickly? So that always depends. There's many factors involved in whether or not a green coffee will be survivable. And what I mean by survivable, like so let's say that you get a coffee. Typically, we determine that coffees are old because they tend to exhibit baggy characteristics. So when you roast it, you're tasting it, it has that bagginess. What would be like the jute, or if you can think of the jute bags, those kind of a canvas bags, if it starts to taste like that, it's probably not as enjoyable. Now, coffees can last a long time through several methods, right? But first of all, you want to make sure you hope that your coffee, like when you're buying coffee directly from the producer, it's easier to check on this. But if you're buying coffee in other ways, it's you don't really know. But what you want to do with coffee is that you want to see the processing. The processing of the coffee is paramount. So of course you want to have coffee that's well cultivated, well grown, and then harvested at the right moment of time. But from that point, you really want the processing to be very careful, right? And I guess maybe the most important factor in that is the drying period, right? Like during fermentation, you don't want it to over ferment. You don't want it to like start to rot and all that. But most of the time, that's not even a worry, right? Your typical producer is on that, is going to be very cognizant of that. But what you want is the drying phase. So a lot of times you'll have coffee growers that will take their cherries and they don't actually process it themselves. They'll take it to a wet mill that will process the coffee. So there's two big phases in, let's say, wash coffee production. There's the wet milling and the dry milling. And the wet milling is basically, and this can, some places they'll do it on site. They have their own facilities. Some places will use other facilities. So what they're going to do is they're going to take that coffee, they're going to process it, hull it, honey it, wash it, whatever. Once that's done, they have to dry. And the drying phase is kind of one of the places where things can get a little bit worked. So basically, what you want is a proper drying phase. And you want the coffee to be dried gradually and gently rather than harshly and quickly. So drying typically will happen in the sun, exposed to the sun, and that's true for washed and naturals as well as honeys and everything in between. Or they can happen with mechanical drying. And mechanical drying is not necessarily a bad thing if you're able to control the temperature, the heat temperature in the drum. And we're talking pretty, like some of the facilities that I work with, they're pretty massive, like, I mean, it's bigger than the scope of the drums are bigger than the scope of the lens can fill. I mean, we're talking massive, like thousands of pounds of green coffee can be put in these and heated, and you want to heat that gently. Like we work with our producers that they're going to heat the coffee if they put them in the dryers to be like 90 degrees Fahrenheit heat and just low heat, long time. But the problem is if you're working in certain facilities, they're always under the pressure, right? They've got, especially during harvest, they've got to dry. And so they build patios and they've got some dryers and they've got the production volume coming in. And especially some of the mills that are, serving multiple clients. So they have to keep all of those lots separate from their clients so that they can give the coffee back to their client. But they only have so much patio space. They only have so much, dryer space that there is a pressure involved. How do you make that go faster? And maybe sometimes they may speed up the heating or the drying they'll do partial drying on the patios and then move them into the dryers, what we call guardiolas in Latin America. And maybe if it's really, really busy, they might bump up that 120 degrees, which can lead to a faster degradation of the coffees, right? Or if they don't dry it far enough. So, for example, we want to dry coffee below 11% moisture content. And so you can buy a cheap moisture meter and check your coffee when you get it if you really want to, but it should be below 11%. I like 10 and a half, or maybe, I guess some people even will accept up to 12. I prefer below 11. That having the right moisture content as well as having the right slope to achieving that moisture from the higher moisture, I think is very important as far as preservation of the coffee so that you can get the most life out of the coffee, because stuff that is either if it's too wet, it could start to mold. If it's too dry, you get a lot less. If it's too fast of drying, it could age quickly. And so we're talking about the aging back to that jute flavor, right? And so we're trying to offset that. And hopefully your coffee is well processed and well handled so that it doesn't really ever get the end. You have to care for it throughout the chain, right? So once it's ready for milling, dry milling now, and you bag it, ideally you want to have it bagged in something like a grain pro. So these are basically plastic liners that go inside the jute bag that protect the moisture and protect it from other potential environmental things that can affect the flavor and aroma. So these are all like steps that it has to take to go through. And so if you have really well cultured coffee, you don't necessarily have to worry so much about how long. Like there will always be a change. Like we have coffees that are, from 2007 that are still in their green form, still producing really nice quality coffee. Of course, this is more of an extreme. Like I'm part of this most small subset of, you know, coffee crazy people that are aging some of the coffees that we think are very high quality that can withstand that age. Like a lot of times, if you let it go past a certain point, it kind of becomes flat. Hopefully, you're selecting coffees for this kind of foolishness that are of high quality that will have characteristics that will hopefully develop into something interesting as the time goes by. Moist wants to know, no, we will not be roasting coffee live today. We'll probably do it tomorrow because I can't roast inside the house. Plus, I have an eye doctor appointment at 11. So I was like, well, I don't want to be under the time constraint of having to run to the doctors and while we're doing the roasting. But when we do the roasting, which will probably be tomorrow, we will actually, we'll get into it a little bit more seriously. But I wanted to talk about the green because that's the important part. That's like the biggest part of the whole equation, I think, because what you put in, you can only get out as good as what you put in. And if you put in like not so great coffee, then you won't have the great results. But when you get to these coffees, right? So I've got some samples here of green coffees for us to review, or just to give you a peek at. Like this one. So I get coffees samples from different like places. This is a company called Genuine Origin. It is a coffee broker that is owned by a company called Volt Cafe. So and Volt Cafe is a very large coffee exporter, importer with offices throughout the world and incredible resources. And this is kind of what I mean. Like these guys have this is a Uganda, right? Rwenzori Bugoye washed. And this is actually a little bit older now. This is from 2023, right? But why am I showing this? Because here's the thing. When you talk about specialty coffee today, this is the great thing about buying now coffee in 2024 as opposed to buying coffee when I started out years ago. Peter Lee, what's going on, Peter? How are you, man? Welcome to the show. Look at this little tiny sample. It's clean, very uniform coffees. Bean-wise, there's no defects. Like we're pretty much at zero defect now. And I mean, this coffee is not terribly expensive. Well, to the commercial roaster, it's not. Meaning that like the price that I would pay, that I would get, the price they would charge me, well, you have to have an account with them, and they only sell to commercial accounts. So it's a lot more difficult but you're gonna buy if you're buying Sweet Maria's, you'll have equivalent coffee, equivalent quality. Then that's the whole point, is that you're gonna have really beautiful quality coffee. And look how green it is. It's so nice, and the smell just so clean, just so. That's one thing when we're looking at coffees, when we're smelling them. During critical evaluation, there is a part we talk about the aroma and fragrance of the coffee, and basically this is nice and clean and sweet. Sometimes you'll have like some of the fruitier notes because it's a washed or no, I'm sorry, it's a natural or honey processed coffee, or maybe one of those crazy anaerobic, different types of fermentation. But what they should be is always clean and not like notes of petroleum or other kinds of craziness. And if you're dealing in a lot more of the commercial coffees, you'll really see a lot of that more prevalent across the board. That's one of the things when I go to Uganda and I'm at the Uganda Coffee Development Authority at their Rwenzori, at their Bugolobi laboratories, where they do a lot of their quality control for exporting. They oversee all exports out of the country. So I get a chance to hang out with the guys there and like talk to them about like, what, show me commercial coffee, because I'm totally fascinated by it. And it's just like, because the coffees that I get have always been very clean. Like this, here's a coffee. This is an interesting one, quite a bit different. This is from the Philippines. And this is produced by the BMMPC in Pigtauranan. And this is what we call a sweet Arabica and a natural process. Now this one, sweet Arabicas, if you look here, you can see that it's a very elongated bean. right? So there's a sweet style of Arabica that has emerged mostly in the Philippines, from what I understand. And this is a coffee that we've been buying, not from this particular producer. This was actually gifted to me by a friend of mine, TJ. So if you look at the green, the typical, what is this? This is a, does it say here? Maybe I can't even see. It just says green Arabica. But like, typical Arabica versus the sweet color, the sweet, it's not considered calasan, it's just, yeah, sweet Arabica, but very elongated beans, really, really pretty coffee for the most part. I haven't tried this one yet. I've been meaning to roast it. Oh, here, this is another one from Honduras. This is from Finca Las Juntas in Capucas. Again, very clean. So you can see Grain Pro. This is the company that I was talking about that makes the liners. But you can see here, this bean is a little bit elongated comparatively. And this bean is, oh, this is the Panaema, which is the newer varietal that was being pushed by ICAFE, which is the Honduran Coffee Association. So this new varietal, or this newer varietal, it's been out for about closer to 10 years, but it's supposed to be better quality production, better rust resistance, better disease resistance, and it's starting to be cultivated in ways where it's starting to win awards and get high scores. So it's really great. It's kind of like how the process that the Castillo from the FNC in Colombia went through. Like the FNC developed this thing called Castillo, which is a variety that's supposed to be good production, but also very disease and rust resistant, because rust and La Broca, the little CBB berry borers, are really destructive to coffee farms. And so the different organizations have been working to develop hybrids that will be more resistant to those things. And like Castillo came out 15, 20 years ago, and Castillo was kindly maligned, was really widely maligned by specialty coffee people, because they're like, well, it's made by the FNC and it's like all about production. It's not about quality. And then eventually the growers were growing some of them, and they were like winning awards. And it's like number one at the different auctions. You're like, whoa, Castillo can make good quality coffee. A lot of it has to do with cultivation and production techniques. So another thing we can look at here is coffees from one of my friends. Craig says that Sweet Marie's usually makes a note if the greens wouldn't grade well, e.g. too much insect. Oh, okay, great. I didn't know that. Let's see if we can find something that we can see here. So my dear friend Annie Ruth Pimentel, she's a producer in El Salvador. I saw her. She gave me these samples. She was actually giving me these samples to give to a friend of mine, but he doesn't do sample roasting. So he was like, just roast them one day and send them to me. And so you can see here some of the coffees. This is a Red Bourbon black honey process. And I think the black honey process is essentially what we used to call pulp natural. And pulp natural, basically what they're doing is that they're taking, gosh, what is pulp natural? Oh yeah, they're separating the beans from the husk and leaving all of the mucilage on top, and then just drying it, sun drying it that way. Whereas, so that's the black honey, or what we used to call pulp natural. And then there's usually black, red, orange, yellow, white, in descending order. And they will remove percentages of the mucilage covering the bean in order to get those different grades of honey. Now, black being full, then red, they remove a little bit, orange remove a little bit more, yellow a little bit more, white almost all of it. And they'll usually run that through what they call a demucilaginadora, which is a demucilaging machine that basically, some of them are centrifugal, so they'll spin and there's this grate that kind of scrapes the mucilage off, something like that. But these are the different types of coffees that you can source out in the world. Here's more genuine origin stuff. This is from Costa Rica, Tarasu San Diego Jaguar honey. Oh, Jaguar honey. Nice, nice. Also from 2023. Again, you can see again there's a difference between the the styles of coffee, right? Like you see this one is oh, honey process. Yes. So that's why like you're seeing, for example, like it's a honey process. If we look carefully, you can see this one, a washed coffee, really green, kind of jadish in color, where this has more of a yellowish, orangey tint to them. This is because of the honey processing, because as the mucilage dries on the bean, it leaves a coloration. It's basically some of that pulpy matter has stayed on the bean, or just kind of the color is soaked into it somehow, even though we're milling it later. So I don't know. It just leaves that color. Actually, I never really understood why. Actually, I never even thought about it till this very moment as to why I would even think about it. What else is there to look at here? Oh, here we go. This one. This is from Papua New Guinea. These just to show you difference. This is the Lahamenegu Red Mountain Natural A. Now in this one, we're going to see, this is also 2023 crop. You're going to see that, wow, this is really much more extreme in coloration, right? So we're talking like here, we've got green, washed, honey, and then a full natural. So you can see, and then also this one, this sweet coffee is also full natural. So you can see definitely there's the coloration left by the natural process. If you see coffee like this that is quote unquote green, this is not a bad thing necessarily. Of course, what you want to do is you always want to, get the coffee in and give it a taste, So let's say you buy a pound. This is actually this should be like 300 grams. Yeah, this is a 300-gram sample. In commercial coffee, we will, the commercial sample is 300 to 350 grams for full evaluation. And so usually most reputable companies will send you at least 300 grams. And that's enough for you to roast a full spread for cupping. And what I mean by full spread is that for a full cupping, critical cupping, you want to have 5 separate samples of the same coffee to evaluate for your evaluation. And in order to do that, if you're using, let's say 13 or 10 to 15 grams per sample cup, let's say 15 grams, you're talking now 75, I think, ounces or 75 grams. And so you're going to want to roast about 100 grams. And that'll give you, so 300 grams will give you at least 3 cuppings of that in case you need to go back, as well as a reference sample. So that's just kind of how it's worked out. And yeah, there it is. All right, that's our coffees for today. Here it is. Once again, we have our different ones. We've got a Papua New Guinea Natural, Philippine Sweet Arabica Natural from the southern part of the Philippines. We were looking at this Honduras from Copan, Western Honduras, and then this nice little one from Salvador. This is in just outside of San Salvador in Quetzalcoatl. And then we have this one, Costa Rica Tarasu, a beautiful area if you've ever been to the Tarasu region. There's that. That's a honey process. And then we have, again, our Uganda Natural. So, to wrap it up, just to, when you're buying coffees, and you're looking at different sources, think about what you like. Really, just honestly, buy what you like. If you're looking at descriptions and you read the descriptions, you're like, oh, that sounds good. That fits what I like to drink. Maybe that's worth trying. And that, I think, is the best way to buy coffees for yourself. Because really, you're really buying for an audience of one, which is the easiest and the greatest audience to buy for, because you're really there to please your own palate. Like I would joke with friends that if it was for me, I love natural processed coffees. Love them. I love beautiful blueberry fruit. I love that. And I always joke like, if it was up to me, if I was left to my own devices, I'd just have a catalog filled of beautiful blueberry naturals. But that does not fit a well-rounded coffee program. So I have to learn how to drink and understand everything else that's out there in the market. Hopefully, buy nice quality stuff in those realms. But all right, so that's pretty much it. Go check out Sweet Maria's if you're buying from home, or again, go talk to some of your local coffee roasters. Yeah, and ask, say, hey, if you have a favorite roaster, you're like, hey, would you be willing to sell me a pound or two of this coffee? Sometimes they'll say yes. You may get to know, and then like for those of you who are like in Asia, you have or in other parts of the world where that are growing countries, producing countries, you have the luxury of being able to go to local sources to buy coffees. So here in America, of course, we don't have that. Or unless we're in Hawaii, then we can go to like some of the farms, be like, hey, I'd like to buy some coffee. All right, excellent. Oh, I'm glad, Kieran. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you very much. All right, so that's pretty much for today. I got to go run and get my eyes examined by my doctor at 11. So I'm going to have to run out. Thank you very much for tuning in. Be back again tomorrow. I'm hoping the weather will stay beautiful because we'll have to do it outside. So we'll be out. Well, if the weather holds, tomorrow we'll be outside. And we're going to drop or at least drop one of the coffees into the roaster and go through the whole process. And just let you know, we're going to be using if you're looking at Sweet Maria's, you can see the roaster we're going to use tomorrow. It's called the Quest M3, and Sweet Maria's sells it. And they also sell it through their commercial side of the business, which is called Coffee Shrub. I'm not sure I know it's on Shrub's website. I don't know if it's on Sweet Maria's website, but it's called the Quest M3, and it's a nice little drum roaster that's electrically powered. And yeah, we'll play with it tomorrow and see how it goes. All right, so hope you have a happy, wonderful day. All right, and then we're back in and see you tomorrow.